Hi, my name is Angela Breidenbach, and I'm your genealogy publishing coach. And today I am really excited to have author Jennifer Lynn Carey and her sister Amy with us. And we're going to talk, you got it, that Crockett family. We're going to have a lot of fun exploring some of the research, some of the brick walls and pitfalls that they ran into, and then how Jenny turned it into a novel series to explore the Crockett family. And I think it's a really important thing for all of us to do, to write our family histories. And as Amy mentioned just a minute ago, and not cause that glazed over look. So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Hi, Ange.
Now, I know Amy just mentioned something to me, and it's a cautionary tale. And it is super important that we understand, how do we validate some of the research that we've done? And Amy, you guys ran into a pitfall while you were researching your Crockett family. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. Jenny had really worked about really kind of bringing the people to life in her stories. And I thought, well, let's be fun. Let's go take it back further, because we always knew that Davy Crockett was our great-great-great-grandfather. We had his parents' names and history. And then we had this wonderful book called Notable Southern Families, Volume 5, which is all about the Crocketts. So using that, we were able to go back and document stuff and keep going. And then I contacted an organization called Crockett Cousins, and to get more information, and knowing that our family was already in that in the book, but I wanted to see if I could take different things, because I was just kind of hitting brick walls, because I couldn't make the Crockett line come together like the Notable Southern Families showed. And then I found the Crockett Cousins, and then found out that there was a Crockett DNA project that only males could do, but about 53 Crockett males participated in it. And then it turns out that there are about 6 distinct Crockett lines, ours being one of them, and ours being the one that is related to Davy Crockett. So from that, found out that Notable Southern Families, Volume 5, is no longer considered valid in research information. And if you try to document and get involved in Crockett Cousins or other things, your information will not be considered valid unless you have maybe a family Bible backing it up or something. But right now, at this point, we can't get our Crockett line past Davy's grandfather. So
Back over to, and you said they come out of Scottish and Irish stock?
French Huguenots that came into Ireland and Scotland is what we understood it to be.
And then you said that the book was considered invalid, but why?
Based on one letter. There's a family, a Maori family, M-A-U-R-Y. I mean, Jenny, is that how you pronounce it? Maori?
Maori.
And he supposedly, the gentleman in the United States wrote a letter of introduction for Joseph Crockett, who was supposed to be the first Crockett that came over. And when you go through and you start reading people's histories, everyone quotes this. They quote how Joseph's father was the most handsome man and in France, and just goes on, and it's all the same thing. So it's coming from one source. And when you go back further, people start trying to take that and document it. They couldn't find it. So I think before the DNA test, it was already being questioned. And then the DNA test really put it back to that this can't be true.
Completely debunked it. Yeah, we have a couple of situations in our family that are similar. And we're trying to discover the lineage of my husband's Luther heritage, because there's all the family lore. And what we find out is family lore can give you some great ideas for where to research. And they may have even come from the same country or may not. But in the Luther family, there's 7 lines of Luthers, and only one of them would have gone back. Well, guess what? It couldn't, because the Martin Luther's final male relative died out in like the early 1700s.
Oh no.
And so there would be no Luther line from him in America, because they didn't exist after that last male relative passed away. or
Could it be a nephew or anything like
that's what we're thinking now, is that we're trying again, and since we hit that one, and we're going to be contacting the Luther project over in Germany and see if we can connect in through an uncle or a nephew, or some other lineage. But it turns out that they were from more than Germany, and that in the US there are 7 distinct lines, and his Luther heritage comes through a daughter of a Peter Luther. So, we run it, and Peter Luther is a very common name in Germany.
right?
So you just keep running into all sorts of family lore of, yes, we're direct descendants. It's like, you can't be, but let me see if I can figure this out. So we're still in the hunt, as you all have been.
Right.
That's really fun. So Jenny, where did you and your sister converge on all of this together?
Actually, we haven't had a chance to really work on it together. She's been very supportive, but what I did with the writing, I did first, and then she ended up, about the time I was finishing the writing, she was starting to get excited about the genealogy, and it was at a point in her life where she could really delve into it. So what was it when I had finished writing and started producing, and she was reading, she goes, I love your book, but I don't remember this person in the lineage. So I made her up. It's fiction. It just kind of gave a reason for things, and that's been kind of the fun part too, because I do write fiction. So sometimes you don't have all the background on why something happened or if something happened, but you've got to get them from point A to point B. And you take the bones of what you know, or what you're supposed to Mine, again, the Notable Southern Families, Volume 5 was a big influence on me, and is what got the ball rolling on that. So I made my own trip down to the Alamo, and I got lots of pages copied, and I circled and trying to figure this out. And I'm thinking, okay, how can I make this work? And so that's one of the things, because you never want to forget that these were people who lived lives, and they had good days, they had bad days, they had excitement, they had boredom, and you don't want to be writing all about the boredom. So you do distill it. But the third book of the series, I remember I had done this in Notable Southern Families is not, how did they say it? They were not saying exactly who that third generation was, but their best guess was, and they said other people thought this and that. So I went with their best guess, William, but they never named his wife. Well, as I did some research, when I first started the book, I found somebody, what was her name? It was Mabel, I believe. And so I came up with this whole idea. And when I finally started writing, I went back and I said, I'm going to do some research. Well, they had found more research, or more had been published, and there was no Mabel in there. And one thought was that her name was Elizabeth, and that she had a sister named Eliza who married another Crockett brother. And then another one was, her name was Elizabeth, but she went by Eliza.
Well, very common.
And so I chose the fact that she had a sister named Eliza. I just, because you pick something. Yeah. And, but then as I started reading, I realized what I came across was that he had more than one wife. She didn't live really long, and he married another time. And then there was a third one somewhere along the line. And then one of his sisters that I really liked her. I liked the character. Come to find out, she lived almost 100 years. And I got thinking about all the things.
Wait, she lived to be 100 years old, or I don't know.
100 years old. Yes. So she was in her late 90s when she passed.
Wow.
And so when you start thinking about the fact that they were at the big, early 1700s, that meant she lived through the revolution
Yeah.
and all the changes that would have happened from colonial and settlement through revolutionary times and on. And so it was, I really, in writing them, I really felt like I was getting to know them too. So, I just kind of found the
You
people to be
used
very, very real.
So
I'm
you
sorry.
used a lot
Go
of social history around their lives to put them together.
Exactly. The
But
third
Jenny,
book,
you also, I'm
ahead.
sorry, you also went back to Ireland and interviewed, and you had some people researching for you that took you around to meet a Crockett and took you to some cemeteries that
Yes,
helped you a lot with your
actually,
research.
they did. They helped. There's a librarian there from near, just outside of Donegal. She made beautiful connections for me. What she was saying was that area, there were Crockett's there. And there was almost like a rivalry about who was related to Davy Crockett, And one of the things I learned had to do with how things were inherited. And they didn't let them divide up land or anything. The eldest inherited everything. And but the eldest, trying to remember, I believe he became a minister and had moved over into Scotland. And so they, I just made it so that the next eldest inherited everything. And, that was the way the law went. No one argued with it. And so they found a way to, they would send off the rest of them to start, helping the family in the New World. They could build businesses there and start things, and there would be import export across the ocean then.
Sorry,
So
my doorbell just rang.
oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, that was just, it made sense. And when I mentioned it to Belinda, the librarian there, she goes, that could be why that we've got the different, because they went in different directions, the families grew. And so that could be why they are all claiming this. But she had found it was an elderly gentleman named Robert Crockett who was living in Derry. And she surprised me with a visit with him. And we walked around this, it was, I'm trying to remember how they called it. But it was a special place where you could go and you traveled, and they had all the historic houses, and they put on a scene.
Like a living village type of thing.
Exactly. And what they were showing was how, now they had set their dates in the 1860s. And they were sending off a younger son to go to, I think he was going to Boston. I'm not sure. Maybe it was Maryland. Maybe he's going into Maryland. I don't know. Anyway, so they threw him a big wake, and they called it a wake because they were never going to see him again.
Wow.
And then everybody the next day, the whole town walks him to the ship, and he goes up on the gangplank. And then they took all of the people who were visiting the village and walked us through, and they explained how they were called coffin ships.
Right.
And how a family had a bed that was literally no wider than this, the whole family. And if you were one person, that wasn't bad. Two people, it was crowded, but you could have a family of 5 or 6 all on there. And then they had them stacked 3 high, and all along one wall, all along the other wall. And down the center, they had these planks that served as tables, and a bucket at either end, and that alternated between being the bathroom or where they got their water. And which is why, the sanitation was horrible, and people got sick, and people died before they got there. At that time, I believe it was, 3 to 4 weeks to travel across. And so it was, but to be able to see it. And then we would travel out, and when we come out, we were supposed to be in Maryland, and you could see the different uniforms from the Civil War being worn, and people in costume there too. So, but it was
That's
fun.
quite a production.
It was, and the fun part, it was on St. Patrick's Day. So that's how I spent St. Patrick's Day that year. But Robert walked
We should
with
change
us.
our Christmas lights to little shamrocks.
Yeah. And Robert walked with me. He was in his 80s, and a couple people looked back because his voice got a little loud. But we were walking along, and he was delightful. He was reciting poetry that he had written, and
Oh, I love that.
and he had named his youngest son Davy. And but finally I just said, because he was saying, well, I just can't do what I used to do. And I said, Robert, you drove yourself here. We're walking around and talking and having a great, what can't you do? And he goes, manual labor.
So now did you find out, was he an actual cousin?
We decided he was. We didn't have any real proof other than the fact that he claimed it. But when we wrote back and forth to each other, he'd sign it, cousin Robert. And
Oh, I love it.
so, and he sent me a family picture and that. And so it was just a lovely man. But that was, DNA may not work out on that. But at this point, I couldn't care less. It was
Go
lovely.
ahead.
But I would like to contact people. There was a farmer who was his family farm bordered northern and southern Ireland, and in fact he could not take the same tractor across the border. He had to have separate machinery, and he had to have a separate gate. And then if he drove it down, then he'd have to drive it down a public road to get in there.
Because it was a different country.
Exactly right. So, he was very well known, and he had a radio show. And when I read about this, I thought, oh my gosh, this is a guy that I can contact and find out more about. And then the next thing I read, he had been helping his son put a roof on the barn and fell through, and he died, and his son was injured.
Oh, heartbreak.
So I think from what I read, I think he probably would have been interested in helping out with the DNA project. But I think going through Belinda and the librarian and things like that, finding people who would ask them to do it, because I've contacted Crockett cousins to say, can your generation ahead of me, would you be willing to do this? And I have not gotten anything back from them. So
it is really tough. And to do the DNA, like you're talking about researching the Y DNA line, or the male line. And there's a couple of companies, but the main company that can really do a good job with that right now is Family Tree DNA, because they have a really good Y DNA project, and it gets more and more and more expensive, which could be sometimes why you don't hear back from these folks. And there's the possibility that they don't want their Y DNA traced because of, maybe there's children out there, or maybe they committed a crime, or maybe they feel like they might get discovered on some illness and they don't want to find something like that out. There's all sorts of reasons people have.
That's my dog. I think someone's coming to the door.
That's hilarious. We've got all sorts of things happening around here.
But
everybody
next. I don't know what's going to happen.
I'm going to mute myself real quick.
Okay. But I think it's important for everybody to understand that our DNA is very helpful in a lot of ways, but that family tree DNA has a great opportunity to give you even more, because you can pay for higher levels of Y DNA through it and then you can also use whatever you do have. And maybe you don't have DNA, you don't have a male participant willing, you can join some of the one name studies, which is, really nice to be able to do. But
we have a younger brother, and so that's who we would like to be able to be part of this. So that's what we're hoping for. We also have a first cousin whose father was our father's brother. So
they can't do it.
Oh, they can't.
No, because we come down from a maternal line, and it has to follow the paternal line.
I thought your brother, doesn't he come from the same father?
He does, but our line to the Crockett was Davy Crockett's granddaughter.
Oh, yep. They can't do it at all.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. So you do have to find outside of the family, of the immediate family,
Yep.
people can do the DNA research for you. But with your MT DNA, you should be able to track back up to her that could prove you related to her. And that is actually pretty important. And now DNA is being accepted through DAR, the Daughters of the American Revolution, to prove your connectivity so that you can prove your person's identity that way, which is neat. Well, see, I thought when you said you had a little brother, you had a complete male line. Dang it.
Yeah,
No.
I didn't understand about the other two. So
Yeah, it's all paternal line.
Yep, it's all paternal. But you know, that mtDNA can help you connect up with others in there, and you can do like a little triad thing where you can, this person is from a male line and this person's from a male line, and you can connect up through that by triangulating your DNA. It takes a little bit more work, but it's possible, you know, that way.
Well, it's
So-
interesting on Ancestry with the through lines, you can be connecting with people, and if you're connecting, and there's if that's the only way that you can connect, you are, as a female and through the female line, and you've got something then that kind of gives you a little bit more.
Yeah, you do have to be very, very cautious though, because those through lines also connect with the erroneous family trees that are on there. So it's not going to be absolute proof either.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
I've had that happen a lot. And I've mentioned this in previous shows, but Thomas Nelson Jr. in my family is not likely the same Thomas Nelson Jr. who signed the Declaration of Independence. And people, of course, like you guys have found out, they want to be related to that famous or significant person in history, and that doesn't
Right.
always mean you are. So yeah, that's an intriguing situation. So let's talk some of the writing tips. And we've talked that DNA is really important. The male line DNA is really important. And we understand we have to have proofs to be able to claim it. We know, Jenny, that you've done a lot of research for the social background, and that social background can help you to prove things too, as you discover people that are surrounding the family. If they, you can track them back and help to discover things too. So who did they travel with? Who did they sign as witnesses to on documents and things like that can help you figure out even more. But Jenny, as you were doing your research, if you were talking to someone who wants to write something about their family history, whether it's to preserve social history, that particular person's story, or maybe they want to write a cautionary tale, somebody's been a black sheep, what tips would you give them toward becoming a professional author so that their work is readable by the masses out there?
Well, first you need a good story. If you don't have a good story, it's not going to happen. And so in order to have a good story, there are two things that really, you need to know the history and you understand. Now, globally, yeah, that helps, but you really want to narrow it down to the setting area. And I found I made a faux pas, honestly, in doing it. My third book.
Those are great. Tell us about it.
I did the research on where Joseph and Sarah might have settled. I knew that they would have been in Huguenot areas. They had a son was named after, turns out, a governor of Virginia. And the question was whether I'm trying to find out exactly where they had been buried. And so I knew they had spent time in North Carolina. Well, I started looking at, I knew what my timeline was. So I started looking at what was going on. And there happened to be a Huguenot village that was near the coast. And of course, I had envisioned having a lot of water in a big epic thing on the ocean. So that I thought, well, that would work, because there was nothing there to say that they were in this or not in this. It was a possibility. So following possibilities, then I found the ones that would work best for my story. And I researched what was going on on the ocean, what the town what things were there. And then I finally, I thought I had it pretty well set, and I had this tree that became really part of the story, and it was up on a bluff and you could see out over the ocean. It was a getaway place kind of to think.
Mhm.
And I found a librarian, and make friends with librarians. They're great sources.
Great.
And
tip.
I contacted her, and I said, I would just like you to check me, make sure I've got this right, and she got back to me and said, I love your story. I love you write like some of my favorite authors, and named a couple, and I'm going, oh yeah. And
It's good to the author heart.
oh yeah, she goes, and there's a couple things, but that they could have happened this way, because it was possible. That particular town had been known for having to deal with pirates, and so that those kind of things happened. She goes, there's one little thing. We are just flat. This area is flat. And she goes, we don't have pebbles, we have broken shells. So that wasn't hard to fix. I could go through and and he kicked a pebble. No, he kicked a busted shell. But I couldn't get rid of that bluff, that cliff, because it was important. She goes, don't get rid of it. Just, leave it in there, leave it in there. So at the end, I had to the letter to the readers. I confessed, and I just
That's
said,
important. That gives veracity to your story. And
Exactly.
anytime I write a novel, which I've done quite a few as well, I really do write a note to the readers to let them know that I've taken license with this or that in order for the story to progress. I think it's crucial.
Oh, yeah.
So,
And-
it's okay to fictionalize things as long as you tell the truth of what the real thing was.
And I think as long as you are trying to be as honest and transparent as you can, to honor that era, to honor that setting, to make sure that they're, because I mean, clothing wise, speech wise, store wise,
The
habit
society-
wise, I really tried to delve in there to make it work. And so that.
Can you show us the covers of your books?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. This, as they all were falling. Okay, this is the first one. Oh, let me, you know what? I'm going to take a second. I've got a blur on here, and if I take that blur off, you'll be able to see much better.
That's a good idea.
Okay, so this is the first one. It's the Patriarch.
Mhm.
And this is the one that's set in France, and supposedly, according to Notable Southern Families, Antoine was the first Crockett of the lineage. He changed his name from the French, and I'm not about to butcher that really bad right now, but he changed it to Crockett. And when they left, so they ended up in England and in Ireland.
Mhm.
The second book is his son. This is the Sojourners. And so it starts in Ireland and ends up being he's the first one to the colonies. And then this is the one I was talking about, the Prodigal. It starts off in North Carolina and ends up on the ocean and ends up in North Carolina too. So but it's just the trilogy. But this is William, and he's the one that no one could make sure, they wouldn't guarantee he was the next one in line. It was a big guess. And his son is supposed to be Davy Crockett's grandfather. However, that's up to the grandfather as far as they can get. Again, this is the guy they can't figure out. And without him, they can't link the others in.
So that's what this Y-DNA project is working toward, right, Amy?
That's exactly right. And we're hoping that we can do that. But it's interesting, in Davy Crockett's writing, in his own books, he talks about being a French Huguenot and Scott-Irish.
Mhm.
So those two things are, but who knows? Who knows? But that was what he was told growing up.
Right. So, and This is the one that I was in Ireland for. So actually,
That's your cousin Robert.
no, actually, this is the fun part. When you retire from teaching and then you start again, you can keep connected. These are two of my former students
On the cover.
on the cover. They weren't
that's
even in the same class, and they came to my house before we went to the photographer, and they go, "Oh yeah, I remember you." And look at that. Like, her boyfriend was sitting at the side watching all this going on. So
And
but-
had you planned that, or it was
well, I
accidental?
had her in mind as I wrote Sarah. And the funny thing is, she is not the least bit Irish. Her father is Guatemalan and her mother is from Nicaragua.
Oh,
And
really?
yes, and she and her sister have red hair, but she has very light cocoa eyes. And but they're both brilliant. They're wonderful kids. And I was honored to be their teacher, frankly, and the chance to get to see them again for this has been wonderful.
So it's a nice tip that you can do your own photo shoots. They can be very expensive to do your own photo shoots. So how did you handle that?
I found a photographer actually not far from me. She's walking distance from here, and working together. She agreed to a price, and I said I will do it. And she did she took several shots and then sold that to me. I was able to I could use one I could pick one. And so she also took for this one, and then she did 4 other covers for me, also the pictures. But then I guess, yeah, for these 2, she actually purchased, and so I was an extra $100 a piece, but purchased backgrounds and had them printed onto large, almost like a blanket quilt, and hung up. So I have those. I don't know what I'll ever do with them. They're folded up in my closet, but they're just, fun keepsakes. So
That's
anyway.
quite an unusual way to do it, because often you can just take the photo against a green screen and then just purchase a photo,
Exactly.
background and blend them. But that's really a unique thing to do.
What you said is what we did on the next 4 books. And so, I kind of like the freedom because we weren't locked in then.
Yeah.
But it was fun trying to find, you're still looking for a photo that you can use that will fit the cover of the area. And, I wanted to get my bluff in there. We put that, on the back, there's the tree on the back. So, but it's really soft. The picture on the back of this one, and it's very soft, you'd have a hard time seeing it, but I actually took the photo in Ireland, and that is Rathmullen, where the real Sarah and Joseph were married.
So maybe what you could do is send us over the full cover wrap, and I'll put it up on the blog for folks that are listening, because
Okay.
that would be really fun. And so, and then we'll get links to Jenny's books, her entire series. And the series is called
The Crockett Chronicles.
The Crockett Chronicles. And we'll put those up for folks so they'll be able to see them. And because this is Christmas week that we're recording, and this will come out just after Christmas during the 12 days of Christmas, folks, what a perfect thing to do during Christmas vacation, but to read Jenny's The Crockett Chronicles. And you'll get to learn more about the research and history that Jenny and Amy have been doing. I'm going to take a moment to share. I've been sharing the Queen of the Rockies series that I had done for Christmas. So this is the Christmas book that's out, and it then leads into the Song of the Rockies, and this goes on after Christmas. And then the next one in the series is Heart of the Rockies. So this is this one. And the one that just came out this month is called Flower of the Rockies. And this one has a lot about a parallel of my own life, of how I didn't connect well with people because I I didn't really understand all that social connection thing as a girl and a young lady until I finally started to understand better and got some help with learning how to connect with people. And now what do I do for a living but connect with people, right? But I love connecting people. And so this little gal has to learn to read so she becomes literate with the word, where I had to learn to become literate with people. And so it was really fun. So this one literally just released, and there'll be 2 more that come out in January and February. So mine is the Queen of the Rockies series. And I would be honored if listeners and viewers, if you had an opportunity to, you can find me at angelabreidenbach.com and maybe pick up the series so that you can read for your after Christmas reading as well. It has a lot of Montana genealogy intermingled like Jenny does with the Crockett Chronicles, a little bit of fiction to make it more fun and readable, but yet you're going to be learning real history. And I think that's crucial and very important. And Jenny's
may I say something quick? I have read all 4 of those and I loved them. I absolutely loved them. And I just, I want to encourage people to get those too, because you will be transported back, and it's a really nice way. The natatorium, is that what it was called?
Yeah.
I had no clue, I mean, you could put it together if you have some word background, but I'd never heard the term before, and it was so fun. And then when I finally got to the book where the description of it was amazing. So, yeah.
So it really came out of Europe, and the man who was building the natatorium and the whole hotel and all of this resort was based off of European resorts. So Helena, Montana, where these books are all set, are in the heart of the Rockies. And it's all really based in the capital city of Montana, and us becoming a state here in Montana. And it is crucial to me to preserve a lot of these things that are lost, because that hotel and natatorium do not exist anymore. They were razed to the ground because they were damaged in a really bad earthquake, and they could never quite get it fixed, and things just kept going wrong and wrong and wrong. And finally, they ended up bulldozing it after they auctioned off all of these antique items from it. So it's history. If you didn't know it was there, you would not know it was there today, ever, because there's nothing left. And I think that's what happens when we lose history, that there's just nothing left and we don't know how things were. And so then we repeat the mistakes of the past, right? Yeah. And I think it's so important to preserve history. And the Crockett family history, what a blessing for the United States of America to have, and how fun to have people that are really fascinated to research it. So folks, there's the book list for your Christmas season and on into the rest of the year. We hope you'll read Jennifer Lynn Carey. And thank you so much, ladies, for being with me. Jenny, how can we find you online?
Okay. My website is www.jenniferlynncarey.com. And I'm also on Facebook, author Jennifer Lynn Carey. So those are probably the quickest ways to find me. And if you get to either one of those, you should be able to find links to everything else. So the fun part, if you do go to my website, it's easy to sign up for my newsletter, and you get a free book.
Awesome. So, and you're going to send over all that information to me. So folks, you'll be able to find it on the blog post, and you'll be able to see it on the notes on our YouTube channel. And Amy, what do you do outside of having fun researching the Crockett family history?
I'm fully retired.
Nice. A lot of people aspire to.
She's never sat still a day in her life.
I believe you. Well, you're very knowledgeable in genealogy, and I really appreciate that you would come on with your sister and help us get to the bottom of some of the myths and lore behind the Crockett name. Thank you, ladies.
Well, thank you so much.
You bet. And hopefully we'll be back together again in the future. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.